The following is brought to you by GFL Ag. Next thing you know the next thing. Next is Now is a short podcast discussing agriculture's emerging next-gen tech and trends as they're happening in our industry. Next is Now, presented by GFL Ag. Listen where you get your podcasts today.
You're listening to The Successors with Paige Warner on RealAgriculture.com.
Hello, everyone, and thanks for tuning in to this episode of the Successors podcast on RealAgriculture.com. I am your host, Paige Warner, although some of you may know me as Paige Holmquist. When I first started with Real Agriculture, that's my maiden name. I have since gotten married, and my husband and I reside up in northeast Saskatchewan, and we are cattle and grain farmers. I am the social media coordinator with Real Agriculture. This is my first podcast episode, so please bear with me, but I am super excited for my first guest, so let's jump right into it. Joining me now is Brennen Smith, manager and co-owner with Baconian Bee Farm. Brennen, how's it going today?
Oh, it's going pretty good. How are you today?
Good. Thank you. Good. So let's get started. Why don't you start by telling the audience where you're from and kind of what you do?
I'm from Kinistino, Saskatchewan. I work alongside my dad in a commercial bee operation. The operation is, I will be fourth generation. So yeah, we work in the Northeast, just kind of north and west of Kinistino, Saskatchewan, and that's where we run our operation.
You said you're fourth generation, so did you always know you wanted to be a bee farmer when you grew up, or what kind of got you into bee farming?
Well, I guess I always wanted to do something in agriculture, I guess. And then with the bee operation, just being, I guess, the oldest son, like most generational farms. Yeah, I got into it when I was still in school. Worked the summers in the bee farm alongside my dad and my grandfather. And yeah, we just moved into this role now, and I've been here ever since.
So yeah, kind of runs through the family then, and
Yeah, runs through the family.
And do you think like you'll pass it down?
Yeah, I have three young boys. They're 10, 8, and 6. So I'm hopeful that one day I can pass it down on to somebody else in our family and keep the tradition alive.
So do the boys, like, are they interested in coming out with you, like in the summer or things like that?
Yeah, they are. They definitely like to be at the shop with dad and out in the bee yard with dad, which is very encouraging. And I like bringing them out to the apiaries with me. So, getting them used to the bees and showing them a little bit of hard work. Never hurt anybody, right?
Yeah, no, you got to start them young, right?
That's
So
right.
as you said, we were chatting here earlier. You said you're out snow blowing right now, and you're getting ready then to move the bees out of their winter storage.
Yep. So right now we're just in the process of clearing out our spring bee yards. So yeah, we just go out and in this part of March and we start cleaning out the yards, getting them blown down. So when the weather turns and warms up, we can move them out of their winter storage and get them out into the bee yards. The sooner the bees get out and get started, the better off our honey season will go.
Yeah, and I guess this year it's probably not too much snow for you to have to snow blow.
Yeah, it's been pretty easy on the old snowblower this year. Yep.
Yeah. So what temperature do you typically like move the bees out in? What's ideal?
Yeah, we like to move them out once the temperature hits 4 or 5 degrees. Bees won't defecate in their hives, so they need to get out and have a cleansing flight. And the sooner they can get that in and start bringing in pollen, the sooner the hives will start to build up for our summer honey operation.
So after the bees are in their spring yards, do you have to rotate them then to a different yard, like throughout the honey season?
Some beekeepers do move their hives around. The only reason we use spring, we call them spring yards. We double up most of our locations just for ease of moving the hives out. And then once we've gone through the hives in the spring, we kind of disperse them and spread them out more, just so we have better coverage on all the crops.
And do you have issues finding land, or do you work with like grain farmers and cattle farmers in the area to set up bee yards, or how does that work?
Yeah, we uh, we do. I shouldn't say we struggle with finding locations. What we do is we just find landowners that have, a nice patch of land close to, you know, grain farming acres. And usually it's old yard site, like old farm sites and stuff like that. We're looking for north bush cover just for the way the wind is and how the bees orientate themselves to the sun.
Oh, okay, yep. And then, so yeah, so it's most ideal for honey production to be close to cropland then, or what's
Yep.
the reasoning kind of behind that?
Yep. Just making sure that we're, around canola and alfalfa. That's where 90% of our honey crop comes from. So, yep, making sure that we're close to that. And, in our area, we're pretty fortunate. We have a pretty good selection of land for canola, and they rotate it fairly evenly. So it seems like we always seem to have, just enough canola kicking around the yards that we do have.
And I guess, yeah, like with the canola prices like last year, a lot of guys are probably like there was probably lots of options last year for you guys.
Yeah, last year was some of the best canola blooming I've seen.
Yeah.
um, Tons and tons of canola. It was pretty nice to see.
And so with that, did you have a better honey crop
Yeah,
last year?
it was a little bit above average for pounds per hive. So that was where, yeah, it was nice to see.
So predators, do you have like do you struggle with predators being up in the north there, or what's that look like?
Yeah, we deal with bears quite frequently. What we do now is we fence with electrified fence. We fence around our hives.
Oh,
Um,
yep.
Typically keeps the bears out. So yeah, we deal with bears on occasion, I guess. And then raccoons and skunks. They're always looking for a free meal.
Right, yeah. And so when a predator gets in, like how detrimental could that be to that bee yard?
I mean, we've had bears almost wipe out entire yard locations.
Oh, wow.
So yeah, when the bears get into the hives, yeah, it's total destruction.
So it's definitely not ideal if that happens.
Not ideal. Nope.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah, I guess when the bear gets in there, they're all in at what they can get.
That's right. They're after the brood and the bees and the honey.
Yeah. And so then do they wreck, like they wreck the boxes that the bees are in? Like that
Yeah,
the
sometimes the boxes are repairable, but the frames are almost always destroyed.
so then lots of repairs to do.
Lots of repairs. Yep.
So jumping ahead, so like right now you're out snowballing, getting ready for the spring yard. So then you'll move to say a summer yard. Kind of when do you project that to be for like this year?
So we usually move into our summer yards in try to be in our summer locations at the mid part to end part of May. That's so when we start supering hives, you don't want to be moving yards around with boxes on them. It just makes it difficult.
Right.
So yeah, we typically like to be into our summer locations in the end of May.
And then how long are they in their summer location for?
They're in the summer locations until we bring them home in October for the wintering facilities.
So so what would be like a typical day for you come summer?
Come summer, our typical day is um, going out to the locations and supering hives. So putting our honey boxes or empty honey boxes on the hives. We do what they call under supering. So as the boxes start to stack up, we set the honey down and we put the empty honey supers underneath and then lift the honey to the top. That's more for ease of pulling the honey. We're not chasing honey boxes. And yeah, that's a typical day in honey harvest.
So then once you bring the hives back to the winter facility, they go in like storage and they're like, do the bees, I don't know, say go to sleep for the winter? Or like, how does that, is there a certain temperature or
Yes.
like
So
that you have to keep it?
when we move them into our wintering facilities, they're moved in a single. We winter all of our bees indoors in a single. So one box with 10 frames and typically you want them full of bees going into winter. They're kept in total darkness and at roughly around 4 degrees.
Oh, okay. So when
Yeah.
you like, do you check on them in the winter or do you just kind of, you put them away and you just kind of leave them?
No, we check on them. The bees they don't hibernate. They just go into they just stay in their hives and they cluster up. So bees will die throughout the winter. So the hives will clean their dead bees out and push them out of the hive. So that in result, dead bees on the floor.
So the
So we go in
bees,
every,
so if a bee dies, sorry, the
yeah,
other bees will push the dead bee out.
yeah, they'll clean the dead bees out of their hives. Yep.
That is interesting.
And then, yeah, we're in there every 3 to 4 weeks to sweep the dead bees off the floor just to keep the carbon dioxide levels down and keep things clean.
Right. So when you have bee boxes in your yards and they're different colors, what does that mean?
Well, um, bees can't really see colors, but they can see shades, I guess, of color. So that's just to help them orientate where their hive is. So we just paint the bottom box a different color, just so when they're flying and they're coming back home, they're not confusing their next door neighbor with their hive. Because when a bee enters a hive that is not theirs, typically the guards at the front porch will attack the bees that's trying to come in and won't let them in the hive.
Oh, okay. I envision little bees at like an entrance with little swords, like
Yeah,
you shall not
yeah,
enter.
yeah.
So, how does it work with queen bees, I guess? Like,
Oh, how far
so,
in depth do you want to go?
well,
So
how,
we'll just do a quick touch on queens because that's a discussion for a whole nother day.
okay.
Yeah, each hive has its own queen. Um, she can typically live to up to 5 years. And yeah, we raise our own queens, which is nice. My grandfather does all of our own queen rearing, and we raise all of our own out of our own broods or out of our own stock, which is nice. Um, yeah, I mean, we could go into extreme detail, but yeah, it's a lengthy one.
So, touching on that, what you just said, you raise your own queens.
Yeah,
So, just kind of the quick of it, how does that process work? Like, how do you pick a bee to be a queen?
the bees produce something that's called royal jelly, and that is what will differentiate the egg when they lay the egg. When it's nursed with royal jelly, the bees will raise that as a queen. When we breed our own queens, you know we're looking at genetics. We're looking at cleanliness of hives, like how clean the hive is that we're taking those genes from. We're looking at aggression. If it's an aggressive hive, we're not going to raise queens off of that because then that gene is passed on to the worker bees,
Right.
and it just yeah, it makes an aggressive hive. We pride ourselves on very calm bees and very clean bees.
That is so interesting. Like royal jelly. I've never heard that term before.
Yes, you'll have to
That's,
visit the farm one day and I'll have to take you on a tour.
yes, that would be really cool. So, kind of coming to the end of your like season, I guess. What do you guys do with the honey? How does that process work?
So we extract all of our honey in house. It's extracted from usually mid-July to the first week of September. We extract as the honey flow is going on. We're members of the Bee Made Co-op in Manitoba, so all of our honey is shipped to Manitoba and is distributed internationally from there. And we do also pack our own honey on the farm to be sold in stores locally and right off the farm.
Is there like a quota you have to fill like for honey that goes out, or
Not necessarily a quota. We just,
kind of like
yeah,
what you
we just,
get is what goes out sort of
right.
thing?
Yeah, we try to kind of gauge how much we're going to have so they kind of know, but yeah, there's no real quota set.
Oh, okay. Interesting. So, I know like in agriculture, and with real agriculture, like some of the stories we've covered is and we've heard from people, I guess, is the labor shortage in agriculture. So do you guys have challenges in hiring workers with that labor shortage, or are you guys okay?
We use the temporary foreign worker program. We have for the better part of, I think, 12 or 14 years now.
Okay,
Um, it is a very demanding, physically demanding job and seems very hard to get anybody locally to want to do the work.
right. And I guess some people probably don't like bees or they're scared of
Yeah,
bees.
yeah, that's another hurdle, I guess. If you're if you don't love bees or you're scared of them, it makes it pretty hard to work with them.
So do you ever get calls from farmers with like a swarm in their yard or anything like a panic call kind of thing?
Yeah, we deal with swarms. Every now and then we'll somebody will phone and yeah, we got to go catch a swarm out of a tree, or they've taken up shop in somebody's wall of their old granary. Yeah, it happens quite often.
And so what causes that then? Or
That's a hard question to answer.
you can't read
Sometimes
their
it's
minds.
That's right. Yeah, that's their natural instinct is to swarm. So it seems when a hive gets, excessively full with honey, or if we, find ourselves falling behind a little bit, you'll see hives swarming. That's just how they, I guess, naturally not reproduce, but that's how the hive naturally keeps going. It plugs up with honey. We've got no room to move around. We got no room to store any more honey. So the queen will make the decision to swarm, and all of her old bees will leave with her.
So when a swarm happens, the queen initiates that.
Yeah.
So when you go to collect a swarm, do you just have to find the queen bee and take her back to the hive? Or do you have
Not
to kind
nec-
of,
yeah, not necessarily find the queen. It depends. If they're hanging on a tree branch, usually we just set up a box with a bottom and a lid, and you just kind of pull the branch down and shake the bees into the hive. And as long as the queen lands in the box and the bees are there with her, and they know she's there, yeah, you've established, I guess, a new hive in sense.
and so would they go back to that original hive box,
Nope,
or this would be their new?
that would be their new home.
Oh, okay, so they're not necessarily in the same box or they're the same hive all season,
Right. Only if they swarm.
only if they storm. Oh, okay.
Yeah. If they don't swarm, like you can have an established queen that will be her hive for its entire life, which could be up to 5 years.
Oh, wow.
And if they naturally, they will raise their own queen to replace an old queen, and that hive can just keep going and going and going.
So they just, yeah, kind of take over that same hive then.
Yep. Yep.
Well, I could keep going on this for a long time, but that is all the time we have for today. So thank you, Brennen, so much for taking time out of your day today and snowblowing to be here and answer my questions on this.
Yeah, no problem. I really appreciate your time, and thank you.
And thanks to all of you for listening to episode 17 of the Successors podcast on RealAgriculture.com. If you have any questions, a guest suggestion, or even a topic suggestion, you can reach out to me at PHOLMQUIST@realagriculture.com, or you can find me on Twitter at PAIGEWARNER. And if you're listening on YouTube, be sure to hit like and subscribe.